I, Lyndon Baines Johnson, do solemnly swear.
26 days after the Bin Jah battle ended, and just a week after President Johnson's inauguration, McGeorge Bundy handed the president a memorandum.
Will to the best of my ability.
The current strategy was clearly not working, it said. The Viet Cong were on the move and on the rise, supplied and now steadily reinforced with soldiers from North Vietnam. If an independent South Vietnam was to survive, the United States needed to act fast. The administration faced two choices, Bundy said. It could go along as it had been going and try to negotiate some kind of face-saving settlement, or they could use still more American military power to force the North to abandon its goal of uniting the country. Bundy and McNamara favored that option. Unless the president chose it, they said, South Vietnam would fall. I don't think anything, Johnson told McNamara, is going to be as bad as losing. Then, a little over a week later, guerrillas struck an American helicopter base at Pleiku in the Central Highlands, killing 8 American advisors and wounding over 100 more.
Approximately 24 hours ago, the first attack in the Pleiku area...
Johnson immediately approved an airstrike on a North Vietnamese army barracks. On February 10, 1965, the Viet Cong blew up a hotel in Quy Nhon, killing 23 Americans and pinning 21 more beneath the rubble. Johnson ordered another airstrike. Anxiety about what seemed to be happening spread around the world. France, which had spent nearly a century in Vietnam, now called for an end to all foreign involvement there. The British Prime Minister urged restraint. Many leaders of the president's own party agreed, though not in public. In a private memorandum, Johnson's own vice president, Hubert Humphrey, warned him that widening the war would undercut the Great Society, damage America's image overseas, and end any hope of improving relations with the Soviet Union. Johnson never responded. Instead, on March 2, 1965, the United States began a systematic bombardment of targets in North Vietnam, codenamed Operation Rolling Thunder. It was meant to be a mounting crescendo of air raids, Ambassador Taylor wrote, intended to bolster morale in the South and destroy morale in the North.
The thesis behind Rolling Thunder, as I understood it, was that as we ratcheted up the tempo and the volume of this effort against the North Vietnamese, sooner or later, they would cry uncle. And there'd be a pause, and we would begin to negotiate our way out of the situation. This became an article of faith. And this article of faith was a fallacious assumption. They weren't going to give up. They read us better than we read them.
The president insisted on strict secrecy. The American people were not to be told that the administration had changed its policy from retaliatory airstrikes to systematic bombing, that he had, in fact, widened the war.
They jointly agreed that joint retaliatory action was required.
General Westmoreland, who had initially been hesitant about committing ground troops to Vietnam, now asked for 2 battalions of Marines, 3,500 men, to protect the Da Nang Air Base from which fighter bombers were hitting the North. Ambassador Taylor, who had once called for ground troops, now objected to the whole idea. Once you put that first soldier ashore, he wrote, you never know how many others are going to follow him. But the president felt he had no choice but to give Westmoreland what he asked for. He knew he would be blamed if more American advisors died. "I feel like a jackass caught in a Texas hailstorm," he complained. "I can't run, I can't hide, and I can't make it stop." In March of 1965, Johnson finally took the action he had managed to avoid for so long. He was putting American ground troops in Vietnam. The government of South Vietnam was not even consulted. The United States of America had larger considerations.
Clearly, we saw it in terms of the Cold War. Assistant Secretary of Defense John McNaughton said, he said our interests there were 70% to avoid humiliation, 20% to contain China, and 10% to help the Vietnamese.
Johnson quietly told his good friend, Senator Richard Russell of Georgia, what was about to happen.
I guess we got no choice, but scares the death out of me. I think everybody's going to think we're landing the Marines, we're off to a battle, and of course if they come up there, they're going to get them in a fight. And if they ruin those airplanes, everybody's going to give me hell for not securing them, just like they did last time they made a raid. Yeah. What do you think?
Well, President scares the life out of me, but I don't know how to back up now. It looked to me like we just got in this thing and there's no way out.
I don't know. Dick, the great trouble I'm under. A man can fight if he can see daylight down the road somewhere. But there ain't no daylight in Vietnam. There's not a bit.
On March 8, 1965, Dr. Phan Huy Quat, yet another Prime Minister of South Vietnam, called his Chief of Staff, Bui Diem.
And Dr. Quat said, there are 3 Marines battalion landing in Da Nang right now. I was flabbergasted. I said that, why? So he calmed me down. He said that, no, okay, we talk about it later, but right now, try to be brief and draft the communique announcing the landing of the 3 Marines battalions and welcoming the landing in the same time. I was very happy.
The Marines were landing at Da Nang on the east coast of South Vietnam, some 100 miles south of the demilitarized zone that divided the north from the south. They were prepared to fight their way ashore. They did not need to.
What struck me was how beautiful Vietnam was to look at. There were just these endless acres of these jade green rice paddies and these lovely villages inside these groves of bamboo and palm trees. And way off in the distance, these bluish jungled mountains. And it looked like Shangri-La. And I remember seeing this line of Vietnamese women, or schoolgirls I think they were. They actually looked like angels come to earth or something like that. So it was really quite striking, but a little unsettling, because you said, how can a place like this, so beautiful and so enchanting, be at war?
My father was very happy with such a small and poor country, and the Americans have decided to come in to save us, not only with their money, their resources, but even with their own lives. We were very grateful. We thought, sure enough, with this power, the Americans are going to win.
Seeing foreign troops marching past his village, an old man emerged from his home shouting, "Vive les Français!" He thought the French had returned. The problem around here, a Marine captain leading a patrol told a reporter, is who the hell is who?
As a voting member of Saigon Mission Council, I was opposed to the entry of American ground combat forces. I felt if the Vietnamese had to beat them off with a bloody stump, They had to do it themselves. We had to do everything we humanly could to help them, but we could not win it for them. So I think we crossed the River Styx at that point.
In the deep of every Vietnamese mind, foreigner is invader. So when the American come in, the Viet Cong can recruit more people to fight against the invader.